There's a quiet shift that happens the moment you stop chasing. The moment you stop explaining yourself, stop proving your worth, stop pouring all of your time and energy into someone who barely notices. That shift is subtle, but it's powerful. It's the moment you reclaim yourself. Here's the truth most men don't want to face. Attachment breeds desperation, and desperation kills attraction. But detachment creates space. It creates curiosity. It creates respect. Because when you stop orbiting someone else's world and start building your own, they can feel it, even if you never say a word. Detachment isn't about being cold or heartless. It's not about playing games or pretending you don't care. It's about control. Control over your emotions, control over your reactions, control over your focus. When you have that control, you stop living in response to someone else's choices and start living with purpose and clarity. That's the essence of dark Stoicism. Quiet power, calm confidence, the discipline to put your mission and your peace above the need for validation. And when you do that, something happens. People notice. They feel the absence of your energy, the silence of your presence, and they're drawn back to it, not because you chased, but because you stopped. This video is about that power, the power of detachment, the strength of learning to pull back, not out of anger or ego, but out of discipline and self-respect. Because when you master that, you stop being the man who chases and start becoming the man who is chased. If you're ready to stop bleeding energy into people who don't value it and start moving with quiet, unshakable strength, hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications, and comment below. I rise in silence, I move with power. Number 1. Why detachment is power. Detachment is power because it flips the script. When you're attached, when you're desperate for their approval, their attention, their validation, you've handed them control over your emotions. Every text, every look, every shift in their energy can ruin your day. That's not love, that's dependence. But when you detach, you take that control back. You stop living on their terms. You stop reacting to every little move they make. Instead, you start moving with intention, with calm, with focus. And that shift changes everything. The Stoics taught this as the foundation of freedom. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Detachment is that strength in action. It's the discipline to stay grounded in who you are, no matter what anyone else does. Psychologically, detachment rewires your behavior. It stops the cycle of overinvestment and keeps you from pouring into someone who isn't pouring back. It clears the noise in your head so you can actually think clearly, see situations for what they are, and act with strength instead of fear. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop chasing is the moment they start paying attention. Because confidence is magnetic, and the man who doesn't need approval, who isn't constantly seeking reassurance, is the man people are drawn to. Detachment doesn't make you less human. It makes you more disciplined, and that discipline over your mind, your emotions, and your energy is what makes you unshakable. Number 2. Stop feeding the cycle. Every time you overinvest in someone who gives you less in return, you feed a cycle that drains your confidence and erodes your value. The constant texts, the endless chasing, the subtle begging for validation, it doesn't bring them closer, it pushes them further away. Because energy that's freely given without boundaries becomes invisible. Detachment breaks that cycle. It's the decision to pull your energy back, to stop pouring from an empty cup, to stop trying to convince someone to see your worth. Because the truth is, worth isn't proven, it's embodied. And the man who understands that stops explaining and starts building. The Stoics lived by this truth. Epictetus taught, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." When you stop feeding the cycle, you stop trying to talk someone into respecting you, and you start showing them, through your calm and your distance, that you respect yourself. Psychologically, this shift is powerful. It creates a dynamic of balance where your absence becomes noticeable. Not because you're playing games, but because you've stopped giving away what was never appreciated in the first place. And here's the deeper truth. Detachment isn't punishment, it's protection. You're not pulling back to hurt them. You're pulling back to protect your energy, to create space for clarity, and to start rebuilding yourself without the noise of someone else's approval or disapproval dictating your moves. Stop feeding the cycle, and you'll feel something you haven't felt in a long time: freedom. Number 3, the calm energy of pulling back. There's a difference between walking away in anger and pulling back in calm. One is impulsive, fueled by emotion, meant to provoke a reaction. The other is steady, measured and powerful, because it's rooted in self-control. When you pull back calmly, you don't announce it. You don't send long texts. You don't explain yourself. You simply reclaim your energy and redirect it toward yourself, your mission, your growth, your discipline. That calmness is what makes the shift so magnetic. The Stoics understood this kind of quiet strength. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself." The man who masters that balance doesn't lash out or collapse when things don't go his way. He simply adjusts, refocuses, and keeps moving forward, without noise, without chaos, without seeking attention. Psychologically, calm detachment creates what's known as gravitational pull. People notice the difference in your energy. They feel the absence, not as a punishment, but as a void, one they created by taking you for granted. And often that calm silence is louder than any argument could ever be. But here's the key. Calm detachment isn't a strategy to make them chase you. It's a strategy to build yourself. The chase is just a byproduct, not the goal. The real goal is the peace and power that comes from no longer needing anyone to validate your worth. Pulling back isn't about running away. It's about standing firm, quiet, confident, and untouchable. Number 4, detachment isn't coldness. Detachment is often misunderstood. People think it means shutting down emotionally, becoming cold, or pretending you don't care. But true detachment isn't about numbness. It's about balance. It's the ability to care deeply without being consumed. When you're attached, every shift in their energy rocks your world. One text, or lack of one, can ruin your entire day. But when you're detached, you can still love, still feel, still connect, without losing yourself in the process. That's what makes detachment powerful. It keeps you steady when everything else is uncertain. The Stoics lived this truth. Epictetus taught, "When you are delighted with anything, remember that it is not yours. Not in a way that diminishes your joy, but in a way that keeps you grounded." Nothing external, no person, no situation has the power to define you. Psychologically, this creates emotional freedom. You stop overreacting, overthinking, overinvesting. You start observing instead of chasing, responding instead of reacting. That calm presence is magnetic, because in a world full of emotional chaos, the man who remains steady stands out. Detachment isn't about loving less. It's about loving in a way that doesn't destroy your sense of self. It's about giving without expectation, connecting without clinging, and staying grounded in your own worth no matter what. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop needing someone is the moment you become most attractive. Not because you're playing games, but because confidence without attachment is rare. Number 5. Scarcity creates value. Human nature is simple. We value what feels rare. When you're always available, always answering instantly, always rearranging your life, always giving without boundaries, you make yourself common, predictable, easy to ignore. But when you detach, when you calmly step back, stop overgiving and start protecting your energy, your presence becomes scarce, and scarcity creates value. It forces people to pause, to reflect, to realize that your attention, your time, and your energy aren't guaranteed. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology. Seneca wrote, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve." In other words, treat your presence like an investment, not a handout. When you start living that way, people notice. Psychologically, this triggers something powerful, the principle of perceived value. When you're no longer in constant reach, your absence creates a quiet gravity. The energy they once took for granted suddenly feels rare, and rare is irresistible. But here's the paradox. By the time that shift happens, you won't be waiting for their reaction. Because scarcity isn't about manipulation, it's about self-respect. It's about recognizing that your time, your attention, and your peace are valuable and refusing to give them away to anyone who hasn't earned them. When you create that kind of scarcity, not by playing games, but by building boundaries, you don't have to chase. Because the man who respects himself enough to pull back is the man people are drawn to, whether they admit it or not. Number 6, the Stoic mindset of self-priority. Detachment becomes effortless when you embrace a simple truth. Your life must be built around you, not around anyone else. Most men make the mistake of putting someone else at the center of their world, chasing their validation, shaping their identity around being chosen, and that's why they crumble when that person pulls away. The Stoic mindset flips that script. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one your mission, your purpose, your growth. These become the foundation of your life. People aren't your center, you are." Psychologically, this shift is liberating. When you prioritize yourself, not in a selfish way, but in a disciplined, grounded way, you stop moving from desperation. You stop waiting for permission to grow, to build, to rise. You simply start doing it. And that quiet confidence, that calm focus, changes everything. Self-priority isn't about shutting people out. It's about ensuring that your peace, your purpose, and your progress are non-negotiable. When you live that way, no rejection, no silence, no chaos can throw you off balance, because you've built a life that doesn't depend on anyone else to validate it. And here's the paradox. When you live with that kind of self-priority, you naturally become more attractive. People are drawn to men who don't need to be chosen because that energy is rare. But the real power isn't in their reaction, it's in your freedom. Because the man who makes himself the priority is the man no one, not her, not anyone, can control. Number 7, when the energy shifts. There's a moment, subtle at first, when everything changes. The calls and texts you stopped sending, the constant availability you stopped offering, the quiet confidence that replaced the anxious energy of chasing. That shift doesn't go unnoticed. Psychologically, this is called cognitive dissonance, when reality no longer matches the story someone has told themselves about you. They were used to you always being there, always reaching out, always giving without limit. But now, you've stepped back. You've reclaimed your time, your focus, your presence. And that absence is louder than any words could be. The Stoics knew this power well. Marcus Aurelius didn't need to shout his strength, he lived it. Epictetus didn't have to prove his wisdom, he embodied it. The shift in energy is what others feel when you begin to live in that quiet discipline. And here's the beauty of it. By the time they notice, you're no longer waiting for their reaction, because you've been too busy building, growing, and mastering yourself to care whether they chase or stay away. That's the paradox of detachment. You stop trying to create the chase, and that's exactly when it starts. Not because you manipulated anything, but because calm confidence is rare, and rare is magnetic. When your energy shifts, the world adjusts. But the man who truly detaches doesn't move for attention. He moves for himself. Number 8, becoming the man who doesn't need to prove anything. The man who detaches stops needing to explain himself, stops needing to prove his value, stops needing to convince anyone of what he already knows, that his worth is not up for negotiation. Most men stay trapped because they're trying to earn what should have been freely given: respect, attention, basic reciprocity. They think if they just work harder, give more, or chase longer, they'll finally be enough. But the man who detaches understands something deeper. He was enough all along. The Stoics embodied this quiet assurance. Epictetus taught, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. He didn't waste time convincing others. He simply lived as the man he said he was and let his life speak for itself. Psychologically, this is what creates magnetic confidence. You stop moving from a place of fear and start moving from a place of calm. You don't need validation because you've already validated yourself through your discipline, your growth, and your purpose. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop trying to prove yourself, people start noticing you more. Not because you asked for their attention, but because quiet confidence is rare, and rare draws people in without trying. But by the time that happens, you won't even care, because the man who doesn't need to prove anything to anyone has already won the only game that matters, the one with himself. Number 9. Living for you, not for them. Detachment becomes effortless when you shift your focus away from them and onto you. Most men spend their energy trying to be chosen, trying to be noticed, trying to be validated. But when you start living for you, everything changes. The Stoics lived by this principle. Marcus Aurelius didn't waste his days chasing approval. He devoted his time to his mission, his duties, and his inner mastery. He wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. Most of that waste comes from trying to please people who don't even value what you're giving. When you live for you, your energy stops scattering. You start building your body, sharpening your mind, growing your mission. You stop checking your phone for their attention and start checking off the goals you've been neglecting. Psychologically, this shift rewires your sense of identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who needs to be chosen and start seeing yourself as someone who chooses his habits, his standards, his path. That quiet authority is what transforms your life. And here's the irony. The moment you stop centering your life around anyone else is the moment people start trying to find their place in your world. But by then, you won't be waiting for them. You'll be too busy building something far greater than their approval. Living for you isn't selfish. It's survival. It's the foundation of freedom, peace, and true confidence. Number 10. The quiet victory of detachment. The greatest victory of detachment isn't in making them chase. It isn't in their regret or in their sudden attention. The real victory is quieter, deeper, peace. When you finally stop chasing, when you stop begging for validation, when you stop living in reaction to someone else, you find something most men never will: freedom. The freedom to move with calm, to build without noise, to love without fear, and to walk away without hesitation. The Stoics lived in that quiet victory. Seneca wrote, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future." Detachment allows you to do exactly that, to stop gripping the outcome so tightly and to start living in the strength of the present moment. Psychologically, this state rewires everything. Your energy stops leaking into anxiety and desperation and starts fueling growth and purpose. You stop looking for approval outside yourself because you've built the discipline and self-respect to know you don't need it. And here's the paradox. The world notices. People are drawn to the man who doesn't need to be chosen because that kind of calm strength is rare. But by the time they chase, you'll understand something important. You didn't detach to be wanted. You detached to be free. That's the quiet victory of detachment. Not that they come back, but that you never needed them to. Detachment isn't about games. It's not about coldness. It's about control over your emotions, your energy, your focus, your life. The moment you choose yourself, the moment you pull your power back, the world shifts. People feel it. They sense that calm strength. And suddenly, you're no longer chasing because you don't have to. That's the essence of dark Stoicism: quiet confidence, disciplined focus, and the kind of self-respect that makes you magnetic without even trying. You don't move for validation. You don't break for attention. You rise in silence and you move with power. If you're ready to stop bleeding energy into people who don't value it, to stop chasing, and to start building a life so full that you no longer need to be chosen, hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications, and comment below. I rise in silence, I move with power. Thanks for watching Stoic Blessing, where men rise, rebuild, and become impossible to break.